Return of the Mount Hua Sect. Chapter 124. I'll show you what happens when you touch Mount Hua. Two-faced and unscrupulous. Profane insults derived from the fact that the sect would speak righteously while acting deviously. Simply put, he's cursing me. It was an insult to the disciples. Of course, Jin-hyun understood that such insults existed, but he never thought that he would be called out so directly in his lifetime. It was a normal thought to have. Inside the Wudang sect, there was no need for such abusive language. It was even less likely that he would hear such profanity when venturing out into the world. After all, who in their right mind would risk cursing a disciple of the Wudang sect? One wouldn't dare to say such a thing unless they had 10 lives. Just what sort of place was the Wudang sect? Along with the Shaolin sect, they are known to be the oldest of the 9 great sects, one union. There are many sects throughout the world, but Shaolin is the only sect that can boast about being equal to the Wudang sect. But this unknown man was insulting a disciple from Wudang. Is he crazy? But the man that entered didn't look like he'd gone insane. His behavior was calm, and his eyes were lucid with a glimmer of intelligence. No, judging solely by his appearance, he almost seemed commendable. He had a slightly tilted posture with an annoyed expression on his face. It was like this man had taken all of the world's burdens upon his shoulders. Who are you? What good would knowing that do for you? Is he really just a madman? Jin-hyun had no choice but to seriously contemplate the identity of the man in front of him. Since ancient times, it's been said that a heavy-handed beating is medicine for the insane. But that was just a saying. In fact, a beating works the same whether a man is crazy or perfectly sane. That the moment Jin-hyun tried to speak, another commotion began from behind. I need to pass. Let me through. Why is everyone blocking the door? Jogul, enter quickly. From the entryway, a new group of people entered. Huh? Did people usually enter like this? Even if these people were unaware that the ones blocking the sect were Wudang disciples, it didn't seem normal to risk pushing aside a group of burly men wielding swords. However, this group was currently slithering their way into the Hwa sect, gently pushing their way through the disciples of the Wudang sect as if they were making their way through a busy market. Who the hell? It was then. Father! The last person to enter quickly ran towards Wei Lip-san. Seeing this man, Wei Lip-san delightedly called out, Soheng! Father, I brought people from Mount Hua! Ah! Everyone clearly heard what he said. Mount Hua? Jin-hyun's face hardened. So the people in front of him were from Mount Hua. Now that I think about it, there was indeed a plum blossom pattern on their chests. Since they had given such a powerful first impression, Jin-hyun had forgotten to inspect them any closer. Ah, Mount Hua! Wei Lip-san's emotions began to overflow, especially since Jin-hyun had just declared that Mount Hua would never come to their aid. No, wait a moment. Mount Hua? Jin-hyun carefully observed the faces of those who appeared. A swordsman in white that appears wary at first glance, a man that gives a soft impression, and a man next to him that feels sharp and ready to assist. And infinite beauty. There was a woman so beautiful that Jin-hyun's eyes went wide. He had to quickly recall his teachings to stabilize his mind. It was all good until then. However, one man remained that still bothered Jin-hyun. What the hell is with him? Despite its collapse, Mount Hua had once been one of the central pillars of the 9 great sects and had a prestigious reputation. So how could a man like this be accepted in such a sect? Compared to the other disciples, the difference was extreme. Are you also from Mount Hua? Then are you from Shaolin? Jin-hyun was about to say something before simply shutting his mouth. Then, the swordsman in white, who was watching from the side, stepped towards Wei Lip-san and spoke. I greet the leader of the Hwa sect. After hearing that the sect was experiencing difficulties, the sect leader sent us to assist. Ah, the sect leader. Wei Lipsan tightly closed his quivering eyes. He felt a deep rush of emotion inside his chest. Although he had sent his son to Mount Hua, he felt that he was grasping at straws. He didn't really think Mount Hua would come to help. What he said to Yeonpyeong was just his own feeble means of escaping from the harsh reality. But Mount Hua really did send their disciples. Wei Lipsan looked at Baekchun and trembled. Devotion. Even with Jinhyun, the indestructible swordsman right next to him, this man looked strong. Then, are you Mount Hua's divine? No. Before he could even ask, Baekchun cut off Wei Lipsan's words. Baekchun quickly continued, but not without Wei Lipsan noticing his slightly distorted expression. I'm Baekchun, a second-class disciple of Mount Hua. Ah, the righteous sword of Hua. I've heard a lot about you. They sent the righteous sword of Hua. It seemed like the sect leader was truly appreciative and sent their finest disciples. Ah, no, then they didn't send Mount Hua's divine dragon. Just then, one person who had just been doing something incomprehensible approached Wei Lipsan with a look of admiration and grabbed his hand. Ah, sect leader. I've heard so much about you. 30 years. I was told that you've been consistently sending money to the sect for 30 years. Is that right? Right, but... Wow! The man looked like he was moved by Wei Lipsan's actions. He seemed so moved that his eyes were moist and on the verge of tears. But why? I can't believe such a wonderful man exists. You constantly sent money to the sect that even beggars had turned their backs on. I thought that all the good people in the world were dead, but there's still one that survived right here. Wei Lipsan was a thick-skinned man. Since he had protected the Hwa sect for several decades, the number of people he met had easily exceeded hundreds or even thousands. But of all the people Wei Lipsan had met, there had never been a person like this. He seems to be a disciple from Mount Hua. How could such a person come from there? Wei Lipsan gently pulled his hand away from the man and asked, And who are you? Ah, my name is Chung Myung. The sect leader sent me. Ah, Chung Myung means you're a third class... Wait, Chung Myung? Yes, please call me like that. You can call me that, our excellent sect leader. Chung Myung. Was this the Chung Myung? Wei Lipsan opened his eyes wide. From what he knew, there was only one person named Chung Myung in Mount Hua. Ah, no, I cannot know everything. Wei Lipsan quickly spun towards his son. Wei Soheng, who received his gaze, trembled while nodding his head with an indescribable expression. It's true. Then this guy that looks like a common neighborhood thug is... Chung Myung. It seemed that Wei Lipsan wasn't the only one that harbored doubts. Even Jinhyun called the name with a flustered tone. Chung Myung tilted his head. Then are you saying that you're Mount Hua's divine dragon, Chung Myung? I don't leave Mount Hua, so I don't know what you're talking about, but I am Chung Myung. You. Jinhyun couldn't believe his eyes. In an instant, Chung Myung's face twisted. What? Do I need to show you some identification? Chung Myung then shifted his gaze from Jinhyun back to Wei Lipsan, whom he looked at with a soft smile. The difference in attitude that he showed when dealing with these two men was absurd. Don't worry, we'll take care of everything now. Sect leader said that the Hwa sect is the best among Mount Hua's inner circle. That was true, because this was the only sect that helped them when they needed it most. Chung Myung smiled and turned away. Looking at Baekchun, he tilted his head and asked, What are you doing, Sasuk? Are you done? Yeah. Baekchun sighed and looked at Jinhyun. I'm Baekchun from Mount Hua. Jinhyun from Udang. We came here because there seemed to be a problem with the subsect. It seemed like you were speaking directly with the sect leader, but now you can discuss these matters with me. Are you saying that Mount Hua will be getting involved? Is there a reason we shouldn't? Hearing Baekchun's response, Jinhyun narrowed his eyes. How dare they? Mount Hua was a broken and ruined sect that only recently started to re-establish itself. Such a sect was getting involved in the Wudang sect's matters over a small subsect. This was unacceptable. Furthermore, Jinhyun looked at Chung Myung. That's Mount Hua's divine dragon? It was absurd. Mount Hua's divine dragon, Chung Myung. The divine dragon had suddenly made its name 2 years ago and rose to prominence overnight. That name has echoed painfully in Jinhyun's ears, and there was a specific reason that he remembered that name so clearly. Jinhyun, Wudang's sword dragon, and Chung Myung, Mount Hua's divine dragon. There were 4 others with similar titles and were collectively referred to as the 6 dragons. In the Gangho, the 6 dragons refer to the 6 strongest disciples that would become masters and lead the world of martial arts. Jinhyun wasn't interested in titles like 6 dragons or sword dragon. There was only one thing he cared about. Among the 6 dragons, the evaluation of Mount Hua's divine dragon was greater than him. This guy is supposed to be stronger than me. That's nonsense. Of course, the evaluations take age into account. Chung Myung is anticipated to be stronger than Jinhyun at the same age, but Jinhyun refused to acknowledge the assessment. And sect leader was right. Perhaps Mount Hua's disciples will come to the Nanyang. If the disciples of Mount Hua come, then Mount Hua's divine dragon, Chung Myung, will also be there. If that's the case, let the world know that Mount Hua's disciples cannot compare to the disciples of the Wudang sect. Jinhyun smiled. How do you plan to intervene? Jinhyun arrogantly looked down on Baekchun. Rather than the divine dragon, he was more concerned about this man. Baekchun's momentum and sense of presence from before was no joking matter. I guess his reputation wasn't in vain. Unlike Mount Hua's divine dragon, it would be best if we could pleasantly discuss this matter, but Baekchun smiled. You don't seem to want to do that, right? That's a misunderstanding. It would be great if this could be resolved through diplomacy. However, the difference in ideals is too great to narrow. So, conversation seems fleeting. Isn't that the same thing? Baekchun urged him with a sharp tone. A fishy smile formed on Jinhyun's lips. Then how should we resolve this? A match. We won't back down. It seems like Wudang's methods are rougher than I expected. Rather than rough, it's efficient. There's no need to waste each other's time. It was then. Your time isn't worth shit! Baekchun and Jinhyun turned their heads at the same time and looked at Chung Myung, who had interrupted. However, the expression of these two were completely different. Baekchun thought to himself, please just stay still, you damn bastard. He was trying to express that sentiment to Chung Myung through his facial expression, while Jinhyun's face was beginning to overflow with indescribable fury. Chung Myung was clearly from a junior generation, but he dared to speak so disgracefully to his seniors. Mount Hua must not teach any courtesy. Courtesy? Courtesy? Chung Myung laughed. What a bunch of shit. You invade another sect and demand they shut their doors and leave, or risk being harassed and beaten, then have the nerve to talk about courtesy? For you, courtesy only enters the picture when it's convenient, right? Jinhyun bit his lip. It was hard to counter Chung Myung's words. Jinhyun knew that what he said wasn't wrong. What is there to talk about? You guys can do whatever you want. What do you mean? You were planning to come back in 6 hours, right? So come back then. Feel free to show off your best skills as much as you want. But, Chung Myung smiled, you'd better be prepared to have your skulls broken when you come back. Remember, I warned you what would happen. Blood drained from Jinhyun's face, and then, from his pale face, rose a terrifying rage.